They say everything happens for a reason. And for me this morning, I was in my men's group and I get done, I got to start talking, I lose track of time and I get a message. And as I look down and see the message, I remember that, oh my gosh, my friend Lonnie Paxton had told me about this absolute legend here in Carlsbad, in my hometown, that I needed to meet. And it's incredible for me because, you never know where someone's from. You never know where they're going. You never know where you'll meet up with them again. So make friends out of everybody. That's what my pops used to always say. Well, this young man that I get a chance to be able to spend time with today, and you guys get a chance to meet already, I mean, right when we got on video, I mean, the energy, the passion, the love that he has. He's the most elite at what he does. But what I think is so incredible is it's a redemption story. And not only a redemption story, but a situation where it's not about what has happened or transpired in the past, but about how you're going to use it in the future. Brandon Glade, this guy is incredible. He's a former drug addict, although he talked to me about addiction, that it can be in so many different forms. Served 3 terms in prison, and now is training some of the most elite athletes in the entire world, one of which he's going to be training at 10 o'clock. So we are on the clock right now. It is my honor, my pleasure to bring you Brandon Glade. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I climb. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Wow.
So,
How's that
hey,
intro?
Brandon, hit me with this. Drugs, prison, elite athletes, and Christ. Hit me.
The last thing that you said, the only way that we can even make sense of how all those go together is by the blood of Christ. Christ is the Redeemer. He's the eraser of all wrongs. He separates your sins as far as the east is from the west. And here's a little catchphrase: He will turn anyone's mess into their message, and that's it.
So help me with this because, like, to think about, you talked about the addiction part, and I said, a drug addict, and then you said, but I could replace that with surfing, I could replace that with motocross, I could replace that with all those things. But some people aren't thinking of it on that level. Take me down that rabbit hole.
Well, I mean, you can get so enamored with a new hobby or doing something that it becomes an addiction. It becomes an addiction where you're putting tons of money and time, effort, energy into it, and you're forgetting about your little things, technically, or big things like your conscious contact with God, getting your daily devotionals, your daily prayers, getting to church, getting to small groups, I'm also a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and my men's group, and I love in that, and there's a lot of good men in there. And a lot of that stuff can just get pushed to the wayside when you go down the rabbit holes of things that you fall in love with. Now, is it better than the ladder of addictions? Obviously, yes. But at the same token, it's like, I just got a dirt bike, and, you can start getting suspension and a better exhaust and computer tuning. And then you got to go ride it out in the desert or on trails. And then meanwhile, your wife and your family and your dogs are going like, hey, remember us? Stuff like that. Or surfing too, but surfing's only a couple hours. That always helps. And it's close because we live in Carlsbad.
One of the greatest places in the world, I believe. I want to be the mayor of Carlsbad at some point because I don't want to do all the work. I just want to be the mayor of it because I'm such a fan of this community. Why is Carlsbad special?
I'm 3rd generation.
Oh man, you win. There's no competition. I saw your bio shot, man. I saw the bio shot. I told you earlier that I don't want my wife to see your bio shot because it's gonna. It just makes me feel. I felt bad about myself. I actually was gonna act like that bio shot didn't come through on the text, because I was gonna be like, "No, we can't use that one, man." I mean, that just you look too
Yeah,
good in that one,
no,
man.
no fair.
You
But
look
that's
good.
like using Lonnie's when he's, on how many rings that dude's got in Super Bowls is not fair. Especially because I always say, and I can see your hat on. I know you're a sports guy. You know, there's a lot of things where, for one, San Diego as a county and a city and all the other outlying communities as a whole are world champions. But you can't have world championship sports teams in San Diego and still be America's finest city at the same time. Like the Chargers left in 2017. I'm still reluctantly a fan. The Clippers left in 1984, 85. I'm still a fan, and obviously go Padres. But I'm loyal, man. Like real quick, I would say Raiders fans will follow their team to Pluto, so I followed mine up the freeway.
Well, help me with this. How does drugs, right? How does drug addiction, 3 times in prison, lead you to working with some of the most elite athletes in the world, and you being the guy that they're all leaning on?
Okay, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Is my first prison term, I get locked up, and rightfully so, paying my debt to society. I'm preface this by I'm born and raised, thank God, in a family that is God believers and Bible believers. And no matter how far I strayed, I always had a belief and would always like. And the last podcast I did was like, even in the tweaker pad and the drug houses, I would still profess my faith in Christ because I know one thing, regardless if I was high or not, hang out with the gangsters or not, and doing crime and whatnot, deny me before man, and I will deny you before my Father was one verse that
There
stuck in
we
my
go.
head. I never did because for all have failed and sinned and fall short, brother. But so my first term, I fell in love with like fitness. I was always a spaz as a kid, where my dad always had me in basketball, football, baseball, all the Pop Warner Little League, Parks and Rec, anything you do on top of in the 80s and to the 90s. I was doing small skateboard competitions. I was doing surf competitions. I even did a couple snowboard competitions on top of all the other fundamental sports because I still have that kind of energy. So fast forward to that, getting in trouble, getting locked up my first term. I'm like, oh man, fitness, this is cool. Of course, in prison, you're doing burpees and pull-ups and dips and stuff that you can, lifting bags full of water and anything you can, the ingenuity to be fit. And I came across an ad in a magazine about becoming a personal trainer. So, you know, I called the warden, I called my parents, and at that time my parents had enough with me. They never gave up on me, but tough love as well. But I was like, okay, make sure that they can send curriculum. I want to get certified as a trainer so I have something to go home with and I can go do. I can sell ice cream to an Eskimo because part of sales and training is that, it doesn't matter what your programs you write or what you do. So I already had an in action sports, so to speak, with a lot of the writers and sponsors that I had and connections that I had. This is the capital, right? North County, San Diego in general, there's a lot of pros. They live throughout Southern California as a hub, but there's a lot of history here, not only in Carlsbad, but North County, Vista, Escondido, Oceanside, Encinitas. So getting out, it was just making those connections. And then I saw the paradigm shift because let's face it, if you're a pro surf, skate, snow, more of the action sports, alternative sports you didn't work out, you didn't lift weights. That's what jocks and meatheads did. It wasn't cool. But they started getting paid and realized, well, you're athletes too. And if you don't take care of your body's your paycheck. So that's where the drugs in prison and then how do you work with top athletes kind of came from. And then that went into, I knew dudes that got drafted and played in Major League Baseball and NFL. And they're like, hey, dude, like, I want to come check your stuff out. And, this is obviously a condensed version of a lot of things that happened, but that's kind of in a surface level how everything came about.
So what about when you talk about 3 terms? You didn't learn your lesson the first time, right? when you go through, like how was that scenario? Or I mean, generally a person would say, "Hey, I had this experience. I go away, I get locked up. I'm never going back," right? But this happens a lot. Take us
Addiction.
into that part. Yeah.
Okay, well, so, you know, drugs and alcohol didn't run in my family, as my mom would say, it gallops, right? We've got two suicides in my family, and um, just a lot of that. But I get out of my first term, and I'm probably at that time I'm maybe 24, 25, and I'm realizing I got problems. Right, I just did a prison term. I did about 3 years that first term, and I needed to have some guidance. And you know what, man, once you start thinking you're cured and that you're well and that maybe you don't need your churches on Sunday and your small groups and Bible studies, and then you see old friends, and then that just gets traction real quick, and you can go right back to where you came from, like a dog returned to its own vomit. And next thing you know, you're smoking meth again. You're hanging out in the hood. And I was really accepted by a lot of gangsters, man. Like, I'm just a white kid from Carlsbad. I don't get that twisted. But I was crazy enough to be accepted into a lot of the hardcore Samoan homies. A lot
Really?
of, yeah, a lot of the hardcore Vatos and the Chicano gangs. Not only in my hometown of Carlsbad, there used to be a little enclave. Obviously, it's been gentrified, little barrio in Carlsbad. But and then I had a couple. I skateboarded, had a couple ads in some magazines, and I would kind of be all tweaked out and bring those with me for acceptance. But I was also crazy enough; I always carried a gun, so they knew like, okay, this dude's cool. And I always brought like drugs with me, so it's like I'm sharing too. Hey guys, don't beat up the white boy from Carlsbad. But I can handle myself too. But that's just kind of how all that works. And I got on that first one, and then I started getting a little wiggly. And then also they tell you when you're in recovery or you're getting your life back together, having it being in a relationship isn't the best thing, because first thing you're going to do if you get your heart broke is you're going to go self-medicate. So that's kind of not how that happened. But again, next thing you know, I'm hanging out with the gangsters, and our best idea was to plot armed robberies on drug dealers. We didn't want to rob innocent people, but this was our tweaked, logical way of thinking. Let's go find dudes that are pushing drugs and go rob them for their guns and their drug money, albeit we know they're going to have guns. And if we go kick in their door, me and some of the big homies, and I would orchestrate them, right? I'd find who's selling what and where they live, and I'm not proud of it, because the irony is the one that I got in trouble for were dudes that I knew. Now, granted, were they growing dope and selling dope and living that? I always say, you can get mad at people, but there's no rule in the streets. There's no honor amongst thieves. There's no book of bylaws to go by when you're in the black market and working in that criminal element. So, I wronged a lot of people, but next thing you know is, we're kicking through doors with guns and ski masks on, robbing drug dealers. And I'm the only white dude amongst. We had a pretty eclectic mix. We had some Samoan homies, and we had one of the getaway drivers was like an essay, a vato, and then there's the white dude. So it was crazy, man. I don't glorify it. It's
Uh-huh.
part of my
Mhm.
story,
Yeah.
but got in trouble for home invasion, but they couldn't exactly place me in the house. So I didn't do my second term. I didn't do a bunch of time. I still did about 2.5 years. Same thing. I got in there. I was like, Lord, I screwed up again. I want to change my life. I got into, I'd already been a trainer. So it's funny when you get locked up and you like get sent in, you're like, your training cert. And like, next thing you know, all the inmates and they're like, oh, hey man, what should I do for my workout and stuff like that. And I got pictures of me surfing and skating, because you kind of want to validate yourself when you're in those, because when you're incarcerated, you can be whatever you want to be. Nobody knows, and then if you have pictures, then you can really bonify yourself. But yeah, so I got into, another thing I did on the outside that I did on the inside in California's big is the inmate firefighters, right? It's cheap labor. We obviously have wildfire issues here in California. Um, and I got to fire camp, and I really excelled. And I had a lot of fire captains that believed in me, and it helped me believe in myself. And then I got out, and a shout out to Sequan Fire Department down in San Diego on the res. They had a big wildland fire academy that's hard to get into. And I had some captains from the prison fire camp put a good word in for me and say, hey, dude, this dude's. And you have to fit a criteria, right? Like, you can't have crimes against women or children. You can't have hurt anybody, killed anybody, have any drug charges. So I was worried, although I had robbery charges, gun possession charges, stuff like that. Um, is that AI coming in on yours
I think
too?
it is. I don't even know what it is.
Hey,
If
it's all
you're
right,
what?
everybody.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Life's good.
Let me
Um,
see if I do a thumbs up too.
yeah,
It did it a couple of times. That was like, there we
yeah.
go.
So anyhow, sorry about that, you guys.
No problem.
The scatterbrain's still real.
That's good,
ADD,
man.
whatever you want to call it. So anyways, um, I fell into this little wiggle room where I had some good letters of recommendation, because now you're coming from a prison fire camp into a real academy. When I got out
Yeah.
after my second term, I was up in a fire camp in La Cima. It's right outside of Julian, kind of more towards Mount Laguna area. It's pretty rural, but
Okay.
you train. I was like, hey man, this is something I can do. I'm active. I like the hard work, and I want to
Yeah.
change my life. And it was seasonal, so I knew in the off season I can train people still, and then during the fire season, from like April, March to about October, November, I'd fight wildfires. Sure enough, I got accepted in the academy. Out of the 3 awards they give away, which was valedictorian, most motivated, and Ironman. Obviously, I didn't win the valedictorian, but I won most motivated, and I won the Ironman award in the Sequana 2009 Fire Academy, air and wildland fire, because
Wow.
a lot of wildfire has air attacks, so they fly you on helicopters. So I got to go do that. Not only did I do it in Orange as an inmate, but I got to do it for real time. And man, they taught me a work ethic, and they taught me so many things at Sequana. I'm very grateful for to this day. And then my dad got sick. I started partying again, smoking a little bit of weed. Then I blew my knee out skateboarding, and I had a friend. I had no health insurance at the time, so I had a friend give me a bag of like painkillers with
Mm.
Norcos, and that turned into me becoming a pain. I'm an addict, so I just knew where it was going. Then I wasn't showing up to fire calls. Well, for one, I was injured at the time. Um, my dad was sick. He had bad diabetes. And then next thing you know, dude, Norcos ran out. I started popping oxys a friend had, and then next thing you know, I'm in the hood looking for heroin. And now this is before the dawning of fentanyl.
Yeah.
Um, Thank God I might not be here. But anyways, uh, next thing you know, man, I'm a heroin addict. First I was a tweaker, then I'm a heroin addict, and um, I remember just praying to God. I'm like, I finally quit, and it was a 12-day detox of no sleep. One of the hardest parts why people never get off opioids,
Uh-huh.
fentanyl, heroin, any of those types of pills, is because the withdrawal is so heavy, and one of the withdrawal symptoms is insomnia, so you don't sleep. And I could barely even go like 2.5 days on meth of staying awake. Eventually, your body just shuts down. You fall asleep.
Wow.
You can't, like people that say they were up for weeks. It just no. They probably go in and out of consciousness. But if you're withdrawing from an opioid, you're not sleeping, and you twitch, and it's like an exorcism. Like realistically, there was a lot of spiritual maladies that were involved in that. Um, and I finally came to, and I had a guy that was helping me. He was letting me work on a job site, just doing labor stuff and just rebuilding my life again. And then, in about 12 days into sobriety, I witnessed a man harassing a young teenage girl in Encinitas on my way to an AA meeting. And I told him to stop. And he was saying stuff to this teenage girl. He was
Mm.
riding his bike alongside of her as she was jogging. And she probably couldn't hear him, but he was saying very vulgar stuff. And I just yelled out my window because I was going up that steep hill right there at Moonlight parking lot.
I know exactly where it's going.
Anyways, he follows me to my parking spot, and he's like, "Hey man, did you say something to me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." I go, "You sick, child molesting, whatever." I heard what you were saying to that girl. She was probably 13. And of course, this is going to be the funny part. He had a Dodgers hat on, and I'm a Padre fan, and that triggered me. And I was like, "What, dude?" And I ended up just cracking his head open. And I look over, and I'm right in front of an A meeting. And at that time, my friend was taking 16 years. So there's a bunch of people there to celebrate his 16 years sobriety. Calls were made. I ran. I didn't run for 2 days, but they didn't come looking for me. And then all of a sudden, I got word that the Encinitas Sheriff's Department was looking for me, and I turned myself in. And then I went in again for another term. I had a pro skater I was training at the time get me a lawyer. That lawyer, thank God I didn't have a public defender. I would have probably just been getting out now, because this happened in 2012, and I would have probably done about 10 years because you got to figure I had two prior prison
Yeah.
priors that were violent. I had a strike. So, anyways, my last term, I did reluctantly in county jail, which always sucks. I fought a lot too because I hated hypocrisy. You know, like the skinheads very much run the white people in there, and the California prison system, just so you guys know, is segregated. Now, it doesn't mean you can't chill out with the Bloods and the Crips and say what's up to them, but you know, you can't eat with them. You can't play basketball in the yard with them or gamble and play cards with them. You can chop it up and hang out and be cool, but there's stupid rules like that. But I remember, you know, just so you guys know, drugs come into prison up people's butts, and this Crip came in, and his butt was stuffed full of drugs, and it just is what it is. You guys, you can cringe; it is crazy. But the first people, like, what happens is if you come in and you have drugs on you and you sneak it in, well, you have to break off a piece to every shot caller for every gang and race, right? Just to keep the peace, so they can all get high too. So the first people on this crypt that came in, first people knocking on a cell door were the shot callers for the skinheads. And I'm like going, you guys going to put drugs in your body that came in through a black dude's butthole, but you can tell me that I can't go play basketball? And I knew God had my back. Not that I didn't get jumped and they didn't try to stab me and inevitably kill me. But again, I trained a lot. I know how to handle myself. I knew how to fight. A lot of those guys that only know how to jump people, they don't know how to fight one-on-one. So I got jumped. But then they left me alone after that. And I was pretty like, you know, Lip and I were just freaking, you know. Um, but then I got out of that term and my dad was still alive. And I was able to live with my dad for, you know, again, reluctantly. My parents always opened the door, you know, and then my dad eventually passed from diabetes. I got out in June of 2013. Finally, mind you, that started in 2002, in and
Wow.
out, in and out, in and out, and it finally ended in 2013. So a lot of ins and outs. I did probably about 6 years if you scraped it all together.
Uh-huh.
Anyhow, and you know, I got to sit with my dad, and he got to see me get clean. He got to see me solidify my walk with Christ, start my own business. I wish you could see this right now, but he's looking down, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just knew, okay, man, I pretty much ruined the fire thing, so I'm all in on training, and then I'm going to use my story, use the mess that I created as my message, as
Yeah.
I like to say. And you know, here we are now, man. I got to film a documentary about my life story. I didn't ask to be filmed; someone hunted me down. That's out on YouTube. I have my own podcast as well, and
Yeah.
you know, it's just that's in a nutshell, man. You know.
So, what was the first little break? Because people talk about big breaks. So you're working with some of the most elite athletes in the world now, and they're seeking you out. It's not like you're having. I love your podcast, by the way. I wanted to tell you, just huge, huge respect there. Um,
Likewise.
well, I appreciate it. And so when we look at this, a lot of people talk about big breaks like, oh, wow, it just exploded one day. We all know that that doesn't happen. It's a little thing. What was the first little thing that started you down that road once you got out in 2013?
Well, it's crazy because even where we sit right now, my dear friend that owns the place, he was the guy through all the trouble. He would always hire me back. His name's Jason Wayton, and I love him to death. He's a brother. And he's always given me another chance. So we had two skaters at our old facility. We've moved a few times down in Cardiff, and everyone kind of knew, like, hey, Brandon's knows how to skateboard, and it helps to train athletes when you've played the sport, right? It's not
Yeah.
like there's a bunch of other, and it's not like you can't train another athlete for their said sport. Just because you didn't play doesn't mean you can't put a good regimen. So uh, shout out to PLG, Pierre-Luc Gagnon. He's a French Canadian, amazing gold medalist, skateboarder, X Games, and Elliot Sloan, who's still like a brother. I was just with him dirt biking on Friday and Saturday. But those two guys back in 2008 or 9 came in, and they kind of handed them over to me. And then I also had connections. I knew people that they knew. I'd already been, you know, I am a skateboarder, and that was probably my big break, was one connected to the other. And when you're working at that time, PLG was like winning every competition. And Elliot was this new kid, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, an amazing skateboarder out of New York, Manhattan of all places, and a vert skater, which is the ramp that goes back and forth, as opposed to the other genres of skateboarding, street and park, which is like the empty swimming pools type stuff. So here's this vert skater kid out of New York, and then another decorated vert skater, and they're using me, and I spoke their language, and we had the same people we knew. So that was probably the small yet big break that culminated into me working with almost every pro skater that lives in the area at one time or another, or at least I know them. And
Wow.
then the surf too, because I love surfing. Like I do it more now than I do skateboarding, just because it's more forgivable on the body. But I still skate, and I just picked up riding dirt bikes too, which is probably not smart, but I'm not smart, so yeah.
Has there been pinch me moments along the way that, say for instance, our friend Lonnie, right? For me, it was a pinch me moment. He walked into the room and, he's a larger than life personality, incredible human being, even bigger heart than his body is, which that's pretty hard to have, right? Because that dude is massive. But
That's
it was a pinch
facts.
me. It was a pinch me moment because I'm a huge NFL fan. I'm a respecter of the Patriots. I'm a Titans fan. He knows that.
What's up with
But
that KC hat though?
okay, so it's for Kelly Cardenas. That's what it's for,
Oh,
man.
oh,
So
oh, oh,
I
my
just
bad.
okay.
Hey, there we
That's
go.
okay, but here's why I
All due
wear it though,
respect to
Brandon.
KC, they're doing their thing right now.
Okay,
But
but
most importantly, this KC.
yeah. So the reason why I wear it though is because if you remember in the Sandlot, in the Sandlot, the little black kid wore a KC. This is a Kansas City Monarchs hat. So it
Yes,
was
yes.
it
Get
was a
rid.
nod. It was a nod to the old Negro League baseball, and
Amen.
plus it had Kelly Cardenas. So it was the
At your
double
nip.
part, and my kids are huge Sandlot fans, so that was the reason why. Um,
Yeah, you're killing me, Smalls.
but Brandon, has there been some pinch me moments for you? Within
Dude,
all this,
totally, totally. Probably the last real pinch me moment because he's a brother to me too,
yeah.
and I've watched him walk through insane battles of also, and he probably wouldn't care me saying this, addiction issues, family issues. Um, Amazing human, amazing new father, amazing husband, Joey Beltran, um, UFC veteran, Bellator veteran, bare knuckle boxing, reigning, defending heavyweight world champion. Yes, bare knuckle. To watch him get a belt wrapped around his waist back in, God, what was that 2022?
Yeah,
Still at this day, and BKFC is the biggest bare knuckle fighting. Oh, the stupid
there it
AI
goes.
thing. That's all right. Thumbs up, everybody. To watch him get a belt wrapped around him was because I knew him so much deeper than everyone else that I watched get medals hung around their neck. To sit there and just go, dude, to be a part of this and watch him go through his drug issues and his life issues, and finally get the elusive holy grail of being a world champion. Because I was with him in a fight in 2018 or 17. He was going for the light heavyweight world champion. He was on the cusp of getting the belt for Bellator,
Yeah,
MMA world champ. And the guy that won, much respect, but Joey's going through all of his little tricks. The dude did a lot of spinning back fists and back kicks, and Joey's just a cheese grater. You can run into him, but he's going to shave a block off you every time, even if you're punching him. But so to watch that heartbreak, and we were there, and then that was it. And then also, man, to just sit there and go like, dude, I'm working with all these guys, dude, and they're bringing home trophies, and it's not because of me, but I get to be a part of it. And then they give me love, and then they give me respect, and they give me notoriety and say I couldn't have done it without you. Like for instance, what um, Riley just got promoted, I think, to his purple belt in jujitsu, but he texted me a picture. He got his promo with his professor, who's also an awesome guy named, shout out to Jake Mapes. But I'm like, nah, dude, you're the one who put in the work. I'm just here. I'm just like a professional cheerleader. And, and that's where God's got me, and I'm okay with that. But those pinch me moments, man. There's too many of them. Getting married was a pinch me moment, um, because I don't know if I was ever marriage material. I think my story scared a lot of people. And my past doesn't define my future, but it sure makes me into of the man God wanted me to be today.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a pinch me moment in itself.
It's amazing, man. I know you have to get to a very important client, but I do have one.
Let's wait for him to come in here to say hi.
Please do. That would be amazing. So do me this favor. So God knows before we know, right? And he's able to take things that most people would see as the craziest scenario and he turns it into something great. What are the unfair advantages that you have in your business now because you were in prison and because you were a former addict?
Unfair advantages?
Yes.
You won't be able to ever give me an excuse. Fall short of like a family member passed away, or I'm dealing with some insane illness or some crazy event that obviously is a valid excuse,
Okay.
but there's not a lot of them out there. So a guy like me, I'm not easy to give excuses to. So that's an unfair advantage that I have on everybody, because if I live by this theory, and I have a lot of one-liners. I call them GPOs, a Glade Pro Original. Is I came out of the gutter, but I jumped back in the gutter to pull others out.
Wow.
And I also do that in here. I do that in here, and I do that. Personal training, coaching is. I always say, a coach holds a set of keys that just might unlock your greatness. There's another GPO for you. Because not every coach is going to work. I got clients where I'm like, dude, I'm too gnarly for you, man. You're gonna. I want your best interest. So we have great coaches here too at NACOA. Shout out NACOA Performance as well. But that's my unfair advantage, man. Is I use my story to help push others and my experience, my strength, and my hope to empower others. Fitness. I always say this. Here's another one. Fitness is just a vehicle that we get in together to achieve way more than how you look in the mirror.
How do you bridge that gap? Because the reason why I asked you about Christ right away is because a lot of times people turn off when they hear that part, and then they step out of the room. There was a guy, his name was Paul Mitchell, and they told him when they brought him in.
Hair care products.
Yeah, he was phenomenal, right? So as an artist, most people don't know this, but he had a show, and they told him, whatever you do, do not say the F word. And they were very, very strict on him with that. He walked in and he went silent for 3 minutes. The first words out of his mouth were the F word. And then people left. And he said, now that they're gone, we can start. So how do you bridge that gap when you're working with, sometimes a non-believer, and it's not just about that part, but you're giving your ministry all the time? How do you bridge it?
If you put yourself through what I put myself through, and everybody knows my story, I'm about as transparent, almost to a fault, as transparency can get. I'm about as open to a fault that open can get. No one's going to tell me what I can and can't say. We work in a very cool environment here. We always make a joke. Our HR department's only open on Sundays, and that's for an hour. So thank you to Jason, who runs the show here, that's given us all stability in being who we are and saying what I want to say. Look, if you're not going to train with me because of my faith in Christ, then it wasn't meant to be in the beginning. There's a lot of other good coaches out there. So I want you to get what you want. But if same thing with the whole political divide we've had over the past crazy 4 years, is I'm not some MAGA hat wearing Trumper. I'm a center of the road kind of guy, but I am a Christian, so I'm going to have conservative values. But I will never shame. I will never dislocate or hate or divide myself from anybody because they believe in something else or they have a different political affiliation than somebody else. And that's the sad part about where we're at nowadays, right? But case in point, I'm going to tell people if they don't like what my faith is, but I'm not pushing it on anybody either. I'm not. That's another thing. If you're interested and you want some saving grace, let me tell you about a story that will change your life and have you live in a dream and give you a tool to cope with life with what Christ did for us.
From a personal trainer standpoint, what grinds your gears when you see it and people doing it because it's not the right thing to do?
Like it's like what, bad form or eating
Either
habits?
or even just like, because we're in a age of media where everyone will become an expert because they watch one video on TikTok, and then they become that expert. But you're looking at it from, I mean, you train some of the most elite people in the world. They depend on you to be able to win championships. When you look, what is that one thing that kind of grinds your gears a little bit when you see it out there?
Excuses. You know, again, I'm going to resort back to that. It's like, dude, and besides like you having a blown meniscus or a PCL in your knee, and me going, you still, those are excuses. You got to do squats. I'm not talking about that. But boy, especially if you're an athlete and you want to be held at that level and you want to be elite, excuses grind my gears. Yeah, I get it. Every once in a while, you can have a good valid one, or maybe be late because of traffic, or you slept in. Like, but I ask people to hold me to the same level that I'm going to hold them to, and that grinds my gears. I could care less about the influencers out there, and there's other dudes out there with my story that are all tatted up and jacked, and they're going to be your life coach, and you know. But also say this, man, like how I charge people and how I operate my business is my time, my education, and my experience in this field.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I'll ever uphold myself to a standard of what I know. Let me see if I can get Riley. One
Okay.
sec. Hold on.
Sounds good.
Hold on. Hold on.
For hey guys, who he's going to get is a pretty special guy, and this my smile is huge because honestly, you know, membership will get you privileges, but relationships gain you access.
Come on in.
Come on in.
Yeah, this will be cool.
This is gonna be real cool. I mean, Brandon, you're an incredible man.
So I'm doing a pod right now. Just say hi to his name's Kelly Cardenas. Just sit right here. Just say hi.
How's it
How you
going?
doing? How you doing, Riley?
Good. Just got a little warm up going.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I know. It's people do this to you all the time, man. But you're an absolute legend. I want to tell you, you're incredible, and thank you so much for even showing your face. I stole Brandon for a little bit, but you're incredible, man.
Good. All good. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Hey, I would love at some point to be able to have you on the podcast at some point too, man. It would be.
I'll send him your info.
Okay.
Right on. Yeah.
It'd be an honor.
Figure it out.
All right, go ahead and get warmed up, my man. But hey, I got two last questions for Brandon, then he'll be right with you. Brandon, Brandon, what do you wish that more people knew about Brandon that they don't know?
You know, really nothing. And that's the crazy part, is because who I am on any of my social media platforms is who I am. I will never put up a front. I'm highly flawed, obviously highly imperfect, but I also believe that we all need to come together on that aspect.
Yeah.
And as we all can realize that, you know, we can love and cherish each other's time.
Yeah.
Is what I do, regardless of who you are or what you believe in or how you voted or whatever the case may be. Life is precious. Nobody knows more than the guy that works closely with recovery and buries people on the monthly. I'm a loving, passionate dude that really cares about the well-being of any human. And again, I think you can see, I hope you can see that in some of my stuff, my podcasts. In fact, the last one I just did with Jonathan Wayne Freeman, who's an amazing human too. You know, at the end we get real about, you know, the current status of the holiday season. You know, this is when depression's at all-time high. Suicides are pretty common this time of year. Unfortunately, it's not always this. Merry Christmas isn't always merry for some. A lot of times it's the advent of something bad that happened during the season that people aren't thinking about Christmas, thinking about, oh, so-and-so kicked the bucket last year or down during this time of year. So, you know, my thing is making sure that people know they're loved, they're cared for. And that's just who I am as a whole, man. You know, put the coaching aside and just tear me down to raw bones. I just want people to live their best life. And also when they're struggling out there and they're lost, that there's a God out there that actually knows who they are and created them and cares for them more than anyone could ever imagine. Probably my biggest thing that's just like, chokes me up again is God's grace and mercy is absolutely mind-blowing every day, at all waking moments of the day. God will never not love you. And I just want people to know that.
Well, Brandon, I started the podcast because of my two kids, Maddox and McKenna. Maddox is 13 years old, and McKenna's 15, or just about to be 16. Or no, she just turned 16. Sorry. And she's in theater, and my son is in sports. I didn't ever want them to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by iconic people like yourself. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names and call yourself Uncle Brandon, it would be awesome.
Maddox and McKenna, this is a message from Uncle Brandon. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't pursue whatever goal or dream that you have. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't believe in the God that you believe in. And don't let anyone ever tell you that your dad has a cool haircut as well. Last one's a joke. Hey, man, I like dreadlocks too, man.
Brandon, you are absolutely incredible. I know you got work to do. Can you just tell the listeners who they just met and they saw just a second ago? I didn't even say it.
Oh, so yeah, Riley Hawk, who's an amazing new father, professional skateboarder. You know, the kid does triathlons. He races dirt bikes. Obviously, he's the first born son of Tony Hawk, but Riley's just an amazing kid who, I'll be straight up with you. He could have very much lived in those shadows, but he took his own nucleus and made it into something else.
Yeah.
And I respect him for that too. A lot of these kids are not just born to a parent that's a celebrity or born into money, but they can be little poop heads, to be PC. And he's not that, man. Like you said, like he's willing to come in and say what's up. He's been doing a bunch of podcasts too, and
yeah,
he's regardless of you want to put it, he's in a celebrity relationship with, his wife is, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love's daughter, Frances, and she's an amazing human too, who also took all that. None of that matters. She's her own human as well. And that's what I love and respect about him and his wife and their new baby, Ronan.
It's incredible, man. Well, you are better than advertised, man. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. And just to let people know, for Brandon is so gracious. I was actually late to the podcast today, and me being late, he just was as gracious as possible. And I love you, man. I literally, I can't wait. Can I come down to the facility to see you?
100%. Yeah. I'll send you the address.
Send me the address, because I want to come down and shake your hand too. But I know you got to get to training, so I thank you so much. You're incredible. This is not the only time we're going to have you in the studio. We're going to have those stuff, and I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life, Brandon.
Hallelujah, brother. This isn't a goodbye. This is just see you later.
Well, I appreciate you, man, and you're officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul, brother.
Yeah, God bless, bro.
Achieving, cause we believing it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting right before your eyes. So it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I want to thank Brandon Glade for being on the show. Are you still there, Brandon? I think he's gone, but I tell you, it was unbelievable to be able to have him on the show. He is an incredible human being. I'm going to have his links in the bio, all those things. And I just want to tell you guys that literally membership has its privileges, but relationships gain you access. I became friends with a guy named Lonnie Paxton, 3-time Super Bowl champion. he reached out to me, said, hey, you need to have this guy, Brandon, on the podcast. I checked him out. This guy is unbelievable, doing incredible things. So make sure you reach out, support him, which I think is amazing. So I have the greatest job in the entire world. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Subscribe, like, and share it with someone who you know needs to hear it. Peace, love, and soul.